Hi, it's Jenny Kohler, the Community Master Gardener here at one of my neighbor's house, wanting to talk to you today about spring cleanup in our perennial and in our shrubs. This is one of those questions that I think everyone struggles with. It doesn't come always naturally, pruning and cleaning up and knowing how far to cut back and what to do. So pruning can happen in the fall and it can happen in the spring, but you need to know when your shrubs or your perennials flower. That is the one key thing. What we're going to talk about here is timing of when to prune. So if you have a shrub or a perennial that normally blossoms in early spring, like blossoming right now, that would be a lilac, a forsythia, a magnolia. Those are things you don't want to prune in the spring. If you prune early in the spring, you would lose your blossoms for that year. So that is something that you would prune right after they bloom. It's one of those real tricky ones there, but a spring bloomer, you prune right after it blooms. Now everything else has timing. All perennials can benefit from deadheading throughout their growing seasons. You see here we've got a salvia today. This is a really common landscape plant. We see it all over in the community. As the salvia was blooming through the season, these dead heads can be taken off, and anytime we take those dead heads off, it will help the plant to continue to produce blooms. But when we get to the end of the season, if we allow these seed heads to stay on, that takes energy from that plant. So it's always a good, at the end of the season, to go in and do a cleanup. Now, if you missed the cleanup or you weren't sure how far back to cut, in the spring, your plant is going to tell you how far to cut, and this is such a great example today. You can see here that where the green is, there's a basal plant. That is where the base of the rooting system is. Now it's greened up, and you can easily tell what is died on this and what you would need to come back. So it's just as simple as taking hand bypass pruners and coming in right to the bottom and making those pruning cuts and taking that completely off until you have completely cleaned off the shrub and there's no dead there. You want to always clean out the leaves and then check your irrigation. Drip irrigation sometimes can be tricky and we can't always visualize whether or not it's running. So if at this time you can pull back, make sure you've got your drip lines coming to your plants. A lot of times with drip irrigation we'll lose plants because we can't visualize the watering schedule. In the backyard, we see some great examples of two really common landscaping plants. This is a butterfly bush, and butterfly bushes, they go in both categories. They can go in the shrub category and they can go in the woody perennial category. We see this commonly planted. It's a great pollinator plant. It has beautiful summer blooms and it blooms all summer. But when it looks like this, we tend to not know what to do. But since this shrub blooms in the summertime, I can go ahead and make the pruning cuts now. So if you have a butterfly bush like this, Caryopteris bushes, Russian sage, lavender fall into this woody perennial category where it flowers throughout the summer season, but it's got really, really hardy stems. They all kind of fall into that category. All of those plants can for the most part, handle a pretty heavy-handed pruning. Something like this, I know from this resident that this house was previously a rental house, and so not everything had been taken care of appropriately. So on this butterfly bush, I'm going to have at it here. Even though you can see that I have some leaves coming out up at the top, you can see it's very leggy at the bottom and lots of dead branches. In pruning, we never want to be, for the most part, cutting off more than a third. But that doesn't include anything that's dead. And so you can see how much dead wood that I have on this shrub. So I'm comfortable going in and taking off a little bit more than a third. In this category, I could use my bypass pruners, my hand pruners, but I've got a good set of loppers. So pruning is difficult. You may want to think about changing out your pruning tool. There's lots of tools on the market, including I have a heavy set of loppers here. Something that makes your cuts easily. You want to make sure your cuts are sharp and clean so that the plant can process and heal from those cuts. So grasses, again, are a popular landscaping shrub. I love grasses because they are so easy to maintain. They add interest throughout the summer. Then they send these beautiful seed heads. You can leave the seed heads through the winter months. It's great to have a little visual in those winter months. You could cut the grasses back down in the fall if you'd like, or you can wait to spring. For the most part, grasses just need a deadheading. They just need this main top dead plumes taken off. But you're gonna see still some dead grass in here. No one's gonna take the time to come in and go all the way down and clean that up. So you just wanna clean up as much of the dead as you can. And you can see already, I've already got green coming up through. If you have a grass that's dying back and that maybe has a hole in the middle, that means it's time for that grass to be divided. It's just gotten too big for the space. Divided in the fall or early spring is always best, and so that it has time to establish rooting systems before the heat kicks on. If it's a grass that fountains out, a fountain grass that has more arching blooms, that maybe the seed heads don't turn color, that is something that you could potentially just use a leaf rake with, and you leaf rake out all of the dead grass blades. Again, these are some great landscaping plants. Used common in the community, easy to maintain, but add total summer interest, beautiful colors, lots for you to see and do. So I hope this helps you get started in your spring cleanup. Hopefully the weather's going to change for us. We'll get back to some nice temperatures, and we can get out there and we can get our yards cleaned up and ready for a lovely spring here in Daybreak.